The village had always been a peaceful place, but one season a strange illness swept through, leaving people bedridden with fevers and chills. Nothing the villagers tried seemed to work. The chief priest, a respected elder named Okot, was baffled. His prayers to the gods went unanswered, and the remedies he knew failed. Desperation grew, and the villagers whispered about a powerful witch doctor who lived deep in the forest. His name was Muroka, and although he was feared, he was also rumored to wield incredible healing powers. "We have no choice," the village chief Lado finally said, looking around at his council with a grave expression. "Our people are dying. If Okot cannot help us, perhaps Muroka can." "But my chief," Okot said, his voice filled with foreboding, "the gods warned us to be patient. They said the sickness would pass. Seeking Muroka's help goes against their word." Chief Lado clenched his fists. "If we do nothing, we may lose half the village before it passes. We cannot wait any longer." Reluctantly, the council agreed, and a messenger was sent to invite Muroka to the village. When Muroka arrived, he was exactly as the villagers had heard. A tall, skeletal figure with piercing eyes, strange tattoos, and a cold aura that made the hair on the back of their necks rise. He examined the sick with an intensity that was almost unnerving. "You need my help, and I will give it," he said, his voice low and smooth. "No payment is necessary. I will heal your people, for a price that I will claim later." The villagers exchanged uneasy glances, but they were desperate. "Please do what you must," Chief Lado said, bowing his head. Muroka moved through the village, chanting in an ancient language and sprinkling dark powders over the sick. He drew strange symbols on their foreheads and muttered incantations until, one by one, the villagers began to feel a strange energy returning to their bodies. Within hours, those who had been bedridden were standing, cured of the illness. Grateful, the villagers showered Muroka with thanks, but he simply gave them a chilling smile. "Remember," he said, "I asked for no payment, but every gift has its price." And with that, he disappeared back into the forest. Weeks passed, and life in the village returned to normal, until one by one villagers began to vanish. It started with the youngest son of Chief Lado. One night he was there, and the next morning his bed was empty. No one had seen him leave, and there were no tracks to follow. "Where could he have gone?" Okot asked, fear lining his face. Chief Lado shook his head, helpless. "I don't know. He was well. He had no reason to leave." More people disappeared in the nights that followed, always under strange circumstances, and soon a sinister pattern emerged. Those who had been healed by Muroka were behaving strangely, wandering into the forest at night and bringing others with them. It was as if they were under a spell. One night, a young woman named Kebo saw her brother, one of Muroka's former patients, slipping out of the hut. She followed him quietly into the forest and discovered him walking in a trance-like state. Kebo gasped in horror when she saw what he was doing, leading one of the village children, also in a trance, deeper into the darkness. Kebo returned to the village and told the elders what she had seen. Panic spread as they realized the truth. Those healed by Muroka were no longer free. They were bound to him, compelled to bring others to his dark lair. The chief priest, Okot, took Kebo's story to heart. In desperation, he called upon the gods, begging for guidance. Okot stayed in his hut for hours, chanting and consulting the sacred stones until finally the gods spoke. "The man who healed your people is not what he seems," Okot said gravely, addressing the village council. "He is from a place of great evil, a village known as Naku, the village of cannibals. He bound our people with dark magic to bring him food. This is the price he demanded." The elders recoiled in horror. "Can we break his hold on them?" Chief Lado asked. "The gods say we must find him and offer a sacrifice," Okot replied. "But his magic has made him powerful. This will not be an easy task." A search party was formed, made up of the village's strongest and bravest warriors, including Kebo. However, unbeknownst to them, one of the volunteers, Ade, was still under Muroka's spell, hiding his allegiance. They locked up the other spellbound villagers for safety before setting out on their journey. The party moved through the dense forest for days, guided by the direction given to Okot by the gods. Exhausted and weary, they eventually reached a village that looked abandoned, with empty huts and strange markings on the ground. But as they continued, they heard noises coming from the village square. "Stay low," Kebo whispered as they crept toward the sound. What they saw froze them in place. In the center of the square, villagers from their own village were bound to stakes, preparing to be roasted over fires. Around them, the people of Naku, with hollow eyes and filthy faces, cheered and clapped, awaiting the feast. Then, out of the shadows stepped Muroka. He wore dark robes adorned with bones and feathers, and as he approached the fires, the cannibals parted, bowing to him like a king. Kebo's eyes widened in shock. "It's him," she whispered. But Adi, under Muroka's spell, suddenly shouted, "It's him, he's here!" Every eye turned toward them. The villagers of Naku surged toward them, armed with spears and knives. "Run!" Kebo shouted, pulling one of the warriors back as they scrambled to flee. Thinking quickly, Kebo snatched a small pouch of dried herbs from her belt and tossed it on the ground. It exploded into a cloud of thick smoke, giving them a few precious seconds of cover. They darted into the forest, but Ade, still under Muroka's control, started shouting to alert the cannibals. One of the warriors tackled Ade, forcing him to the ground. "He's been cursed," the warrior spat, leaving him there as they continued running. Just when it seemed they would be caught, one of the older prisoners, an elder captured long ago, pulled Kebo aside, pointing to a hidden tunnel beneath the roots of an old tree. "This will take you out," the elder whispered. "But if you want to defeat him, there's only one way. His powers fade with the first light of dawn if he's in his ritual attire. Delay him until then, and you may have a chance." Kebo nodded, determined. She and the remaining warriors squeezed into the narrow tunnel, crawling through darkness until they emerged far from the cannibal village. As dawn approached, the remaining warriors regrouped and prepared for one last attempt to end Muroka's reign of terror. They circled back to the cannibal village and found Muroka preparing for his morning ritual. He stood before his followers in his ritual garb, chanting and sprinkling blood over the ground to maintain his power. "Now," Kebo whispered, and the warriors charged forward, catching the cannibals by surprise. Muroka turned to see them, his eyes flashing with rage. "You think you can stop me?" he hissed, his voice low and menacing. Kebo raised her spear. "Your curse ends here, Muroka. We may have been desperate, but we will not be your slaves any longer." The battle was fierce. Muroka fought with inhuman strength, swinging his staff and chanting curses that weakened the warriors. But Kebo and her comrades held firm, fighting to delay him until the sun began to rise. As the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Muroka's skin began to shrivel and crack, his youth fading before their eyes. He staggered, weakened, his eyes filled with hatred. "No!" he screamed. "You have ruined everything!" With a final thrust, Kebo drove her spear into his heart. Muroka collapsed, his body turning to ash under the growing sunlight. The cannibals scattered, wailing as their leader's power was destroyed. The warriors freed the captured villagers and made their way back home, exhausted but victorious. When they returned, Okot welcomed them with a cleansing ritual, purging any lingering darkness from the journey. "You have saved us all," Chief Lado said, his voice filled with gratitude. "We have learned a hard lesson today about patience and faith." Kebo nodded, but a lingering sense of dread filled her heart. As time passed, strange whispers would still be heard in the village from time to time. The villagers would sometimes hear faint voices drifting in from the edge of the forest, especially on dark, moonless nights. It was said that these whispers sounded like Muroka's voice, low and insistent, carried by the wind. The elders warned the villagers to stay away from the forest after sunset. Even though Muroka was gone, his malevolent spirit seemed to linger in the air. Many villagers swore that on some nights, they could see faint shadows moving among the trees, as though Muroka's followers still wandered, waiting for their master to return. Okot, the chief priest, gathered the villagers in the square one evening to offer them a final warning. "We were saved from the curse of the witch doctor. he said, his voice solemn. But Muroka's spirit clings to our village as a shadow, a reminder of the cost of our impatience and desperation. Let this be a lesson to us all. He reminded them that their own impatience and lack of faith had brought Muroka into their lives. If they had trusted the gods' timing, they would not have sought Muroka's aid and paid such a heavy price. We must honor the wisdom of the gods, Okot continued. When we stray from the path they set for us, we invite darkness into our lives. The villagers nodded, chastened by the reminder. They understood now that Muroka's dark magic had found its way into their lives because of their own choices. They vowed to never again seek forbidden help, no matter how dire the circumstances. Generations later, the story of Muroka and his curse continued to be told around the village fires. Children listened wide-eyed as their elders spoke of the witch doctor's powers, the horrifying journey to the cannibal village of Naku, and the bravery of Kebo and the others who had ended Muroka's reign. But there was always a warning at the end of the tale. The elders would look each child in the eye and say, "Beware those who offer gifts without asking for payment, for they may already know the price." And even years after, the village could still feel the lingering shadow of Muroka's spirit. Some nights, if the wind was just right, a faint, eerie voice could still be heard from the depths of the forest. The villagers learned to close their doors and windows tightly at night, and the children were warned to stay away from the forest's edge. It was said that if you listened too closely to those whispers, Muroka's hunger would find you, and you would be drawn to him just as those first cursed villagers had been.